Hello, hello. Welcome to yet another edition of the Digital Factory Live Dialogue. On today's show, we are joined by my co-host in the person of Dorcas Owusu Obiniwa. How are you, Dorcas?
Hello, Richard.
And having in the house, in the studio here, we have Mohammed. How are you, Mohammed?
I'm doing
Good to
great.
have you. Digital Factory Show is a show where we bring you insightful conversations around the digital ecosystem in Africa, trying to surface insight and prefer probable solutions to issues that are pertinent around the digital ecosystem in Africa. On the call is Cecile Notako, who is the founder and CEO of eCampus LLC. I hope I got that right. It's good to have Cecile join us on the call. Just a little bit. Recently, Cecile was given a sort of a name, and it's called the Charlie Brofu idea. I mean, doing. How do you pronounce this English, Dorcas?
Quintessential.
Say again.
Quintessential.
Wow, interesting. So, according to Eric Osikwine, it says Cecile is the
Quintessential.
a great holder of EdTech in Africa. And Cecile, challenge your title there. We can't comprehend. What's good? Good to see you on the call, Charlie. How are you doing?
I'm good. I don't know where Eric got those words from, but
Charlie, the bro, is difficult, man.
Yeah, consequential. I tried pronouncing it myself for the first time. I'm like, okay, so I had to
So
go
you're
to
also in
Google
this party.
to find out what
All right.
it meant. So I think it's great. The meaning is quite honorable to realize that I'm being considered such a relevant factor in promoting EdTech in Africa. I think it just calls for us to do more work, and I'm glad Digital
Awesome.
Factory is helping to get those works going. So I'm glad to
Thank
be
you.
here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dorcas, who do we have next on the call?
Okay, so our next on the call, this is actually a hybrid show. So we have some of our guests in-house and the rest are being held virtually. So on my right-hand side, I have Mohammed Zakaria. He's a tech and policy expert at Ghana Tech Lab. Hello, Mohammed.
Hi, Dorcas.
It's good to have you on the show.
Great.
Also joining us is Mr. Emmanuel Momoni, who is a technical advisor to GIZ on the project Make IT in Africa. I hope I got that right.
Make IT in Africa.
Emmanuel currently leads the Policy Dialogue or the Startup Policy Act team, right? I'm getting all of those right, Emmanuel.
You are accurate, yeah.
Perfect. Good to have you on the show, Emmanuel. So Dorcas is going to set the ball rolling and set the tone for the conversation, and then we'll dive straight in.
Hello, everyone. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Dorcas.
Okay, so let's set the ball rolling. I'm going to begin with Mohammed, since you're right here with me. Mohammed, I want you to give us a brief description of what exactly digital education is all about.
So, to put it in very simple terms for everyone to understand, digital education is like moving away from classroom form of education to having education virtually without necessarily having to see or face any obstacles as we have across Africa. Sorry to say. Yeah, that's in basic terms.
Okay, so
You touched on something there, but
yeah, I think I'll come
you'll go back
that.
to it, I guess.
Yeah, and Mohammed mentioned something about obstacles, and that leads me straight to my second question, which I'd want to ask Cecil. Cecil, do you think Africa is well established to transition onto the digital educational systems fully? As in looking at our systems right now, do you think we are well positioned to transform all our brick and mortar systems into digital educational platforms?
Okay, so we don't necessarily have to move away from brick and mortar. I mean, digital education is trying to introduce the use of technology to enhance the delivery and consumption of education. So look at it more of a blended approach. It is not by force that we move away from brick and mortar. Brick and mortar has its place, teacher or instructor-led teaching and learning has its place. So technology is to make it more efficient, is to enhance it. So the idea of we have to move away, I don't agree with that. Now, to your question as to
I think we are losing Cecile there. Hi, Cecile. I think we're losing you. We'll just probably move along and go straight. Okay, welcome back. Good to have you back.
So clearly, because of some of these things, no country is fully ready for digital education. So the issue, it will amaze you that even in the US and in the UK, or even in most European Union countries, there are still infrastructural deficits. You know what I mean? So there are still areas where fiber optic is not fully laid. There are still areas where access to reliable internet is still a challenge. So globally, we're transitioning as a civilization gradually into getting our infrastructure ready to take on a large-scale digital transformation. But that said, I think Africa has done a lot. If you look at what the telecom companies or the telcos have achieved across the continent, it tells you that we have what it takes to get this infrastructure in place. We just need to put in the necessary investment, maybe prioritize this infrastructure investments, and then in the next decade, we should be maybe 40%, 60%, and hopefully 70% much more ready than we are today. So if you want me to put it on a scale, I think for now we can say Africa is about 25% ready to go digital, especially for education. But then that's still a bit behind. But if we put in the necessary investment into infrastructure, work with the telecom companies to expand the telephony or connectivity infrastructure to the underserved areas as well, then we should be at least 75% ready. To be 100% ready will mean we have to also start investing into devices to cater for the last mile. And then that will put us somewhere around 85%. Then we need to overhaul our teacher training procedures or framework. Now in Ghana, we call them College of Education, where the curriculum to train teachers must be designed intentionally to train teachers that can use digital tools to create, deliver, and monitor education outcomes. When these three are done, then we can be 98% ready. So by far, we're 25. We have a long way to go, but we're good.
Wow, we have a long way to go. Thank you, Cecile, for that insightful contribution. We have a long way to go. I think recently I got hold of this report by Tech Cabal that says 97.5 million children in Africa are out of school. Right? That's a whole generation out there sitting back at home and doing nothing. Right? You are a tech policy expert. You probably know these numbers well, so Mohammed, right? How soon do you think we can catch up with the digital bandwagon sweeping across the continent of the world, especially when it comes to digital education?
I'd say within the next decade.
Okay.
Yeah, with the backlog that we presently have, and I give you the reason why I say within the next decade. Most governments at present are focusing on infrastructure, rolling out a lot of infrastructural support systems to be able to help with some of these things. Now, what happens is what is available to be able to help a lot of people to actually be able to access or be able to bridge this gap is not providing full-scale capacity support.
Okay.
And most people who are marginally affected find themselves even in places where access to internet is very bad.
That's true.
If we speak about Ghana, Ghana seems much better in terms of the initiative the government has rolled out over so far. Comparing to other African countries, we can say close to 10 African countries are on the map, on the route to achieving this close to the next 5
out
years.
of how many years?
I mean, Africa is made up of close to how many countries?
There are 50 something.
So that should tell you what lies ahead. So for me, Africa-wide, close to the next decade, by 2030, we should have that sorted out. Okay. But then, the top 10 countries I'm speaking about, by 2025, we should have a lot done, close to 90%.
Very well then. Dorcas?
Yeah, so to our next question, I'd like to ask Emmanuel, you are a policy advisor for Make IT Africa. So I'd like to ask you, based on what Mohammed just said, what do you think can be done to bridge the digital divide between rural areas and urban areas so we can make digital education a large scale thing across country or across the continent? So it wouldn't be like one party is being favored over the other. If you want it to be on a large scale and to really improve, what can be done to improve the digital divide we are currently facing now?
Right. Thanks so much for the question. And I think that gap that you've just mentioned is one of the biggest challenges of the country at this point. And if you look at the statistics, it can sometimes be misleading because we talk about how much access people have to mobile phones, how much access people have to internet, and how that is helping people in the country. But what you realize is that there's most of those statistics are just serving people in urban centers, and the people in the rural areas are, being left behind. And I always say that the narrative has shifted to a lot of people are talking about how robots are coming to take our jobs and how we should fight back and ensure that the robots are not coming to take our jobs. And I'm like, that is not our challenge right now. We have people who do not have access to internet. We have people who haven't seen a laptop before, a computer before, and they haven't even touched a mouse before. Those are the people that we should be targeting, and that's where the danger is. The danger is not robots taking our jobs. The danger really lies in the excluding relevant population from the digital transformation that is happening. And so we need to be conscious about what we are doing and how we become more equitable in the development that we're doing. First thing would be to understand this very population. What are their needs? How can we solve them? I mean, you can solve a challenge in a rural area with an application or a mobile application. That is not what they need at this point. Maybe they just need a roof over their heads as students. They need to not be beaten by rain when it rains. And so those are the things that they need at this point. It's not even a matter of digital transformation. It's the very things that would enable us to even go to start to think about the digital transformation. So those social amenities that would enable schools to even have an environment that we in Accra or we in these big cities enjoy, those are the things they need. And those things will serve as infrastructure for us to even install or even start to think about digital innovations. But there are a lot of things that the government needs to do. The government needs to invest a lot more in education, right? Cecil is here, he's been running his business for a long time now, and he tells you about the challenges that they feel and even our understanding of what digitalization is and what technology people are using to solve challenges. And for me, it has always been giving the private sector the way to bring this development that we need. It's not government that is going to do it, but government has a role to play in paving out the way and making it easier for these private sector actors to come in and provide this enabling environment for students and, for that matter, people who want to learn to have that space. And I think when we talk about digital education, we usually would think about a child seated in a classroom and learning about digital tools, right? It goes way beyond that. Even the way we learn as adults, the way that will translate in adult education. There are people who have grown up and they cannot use the computer or a basic smartphone, right? So those are the different segments. When you are in business, they talk a lot about the different customer segments, and it applies to digital innovation or transformation as well. That we need to segment the different people that we have in our country and know how to target them with different initiatives. People at the advanced level would need way advanced digital skills. Maybe they are those that are being threatened by robots. Those are people that we target differently. This is different from people who have never learned or been exposed to any digital tools. And then you can talk about people in the rural areas. How do we even bridge that? And it's not even only about geography. It's not only about rural, urban. It could also be about gender. Research shows that many women are generally less exposed to digital innovations throughout their lives than men. And so we need to bridge that gap. There's also a gap with disabilities as well, people living with disabilities. How do you include them in the digital transformation? If not, we will get to the finish line and realize that half of our population is behind. So we need to include them.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That's that's a lot. Talking about gender there, talking about disability, that's a whole lot to take in, right? At a time. But let me bring this in. So 10 to 12 million youths enter the workforce each year, right? And mostly these youths do not have the requisite skills to deliver at the job place. And we're talking about policy here and talking about digital education and how regulations can all like take effect on this. These are my thoughts. How can stakeholders, right, within the relevant ecosystem, I mean, people like the likes of Cecile, right, force the hands of government, right, to create policies that actually improve onboarding that actually onboards the use of digital tools or digital services to propose educational solutions? Cecile.
So I don't know about forcing the arms of government, but what I know is that we need to start taking data seriously as a people. We need to start taking research seriously as a people. I have seen a lot of attempts made by several governments in Ghana to promote digital or education or the use of technology within education. For the purpose of this talk or this conversation, I'll probably be using EdTech. So as far as I can remember, the late Banredu, when he was then the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, was the first to introduce this one laptop per child project. Now that was as far back as 2004. I don't know what happened to it. It didn't work. For some reason, it just didn't work. Then when blessed memory again, Atamels was president, he also started with one laptop. He also continued or introduced another version of the one laptop per child. I remember they were using RLG laptops, which was very encouraging because those laptops were being assembled here in Ghana. I think the challenge they ran into, because I got a bit involved trying to follow up, the challenge they ran into was at the time they were giving all these devices to students and there was no content on the device. And there was no connectivity in the places where these devices were needed the most. So again, we didn't use a lot of data in planning. We didn't rely on research in planning. So we procured a lot of laptops, gave it to students and teachers, and the curriculum was not yet digitized. There were no video content. Like there was no content. So then, yeah, they had some devices. That approach didn't work as well. Then when Honorable Osla became Minister of Communications, she also tried to introduce the one tablet per child. I'm yet to see any of those tablets go out. And funny enough, in the previous, they just ended election, the manifesto of the ruling government had a portion in the manifesto saying we were going to give one tablet per child. So clearly you could see that there have been several attempts by government to try and promote EdTech in Ghana. But then from the policy point of view, because from what I think, because they don't rely on data, they don't talk to people like myself and those of my other colleagues who are in the EdTech space. We've spent close to a decade in the EdTech space. We are on the ground. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. When they're having these policy meetings, they don't invite us. When they are planning their stakeholder engagement, because, excuse me to say, we don't have party cards, we are not involved in those engagements. So they come out with some wishful thinking, some assumptions, and then spend the taxpayers' money to implement things that after 3 years, you realize it's not going to work. So if we really want to tackle the issue, like Emmanuel said, allow private sector to drive this thing. You can call those meetings. Of course, I will not say I won't go for a meeting if I'm called by the government. When COVID hits, the first few weeks, I lost the number of meetings I had to attend. Ministry of Education calling, Ministry of Communication calling, Ministry of Information calling, and they wanted us to perform magic overnight. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And you can't just do magic because it's COVID. These are things you should have done systematically. So let's take advantage and start doing systematically. So if you ask me to bend government's hand, what we have tried to do and we're doing after all this I've explained, the background I've given you, is to prove to government that what we are doing at private sector works. So we have to do that at a very small scale. I don't want to use the word MVP because it's been overused. So if I can show government that, look, I've worked with 10 schools over a period of 1 year. I've given them access to content on a certain platform. In that case, eCampus. So recently we gave access to 10,000, almost 10,000 junior high, senior high school students, for 6 months. That's from June to December, which cost us about 2 million Ghana cedis. The idea here is that by December, this student would have engaged with the core subjects, mathematics, English, integrated science, and social studies. So we'll have a learning behavior history of the students. So we can tell their strengths and weaknesses based on topics and the subjects. Then we can tell which region, which district, have students performing better in photosynthesis and which district have students struggling in maybe probability. Then begin to map it with, okay, the teachers that teach in the schools that are doing well in photosynthesis are coming from Winneba College of Education, or the teachers that are in whatever district that is struggling with probability are coming from Accra College of Education. Then we begin to say, okay, what can we do better at Accra College of Education to produce a teacher that will be able to help students learn better and perform based on the data we have. If you can show government that kind of data, because these are 80 schools, 10,000 students we're talking about. If you can show them that data, then I'm sure they will begin to rethink how they engage stakeholders. They might begin to have confidence in local content in terms of like local startups, indigenous startups like our own who are trying to solve this problem. Because it is easy for them to import some of these technologies and ideas because those folks are able to show them data that, oh, we did this in Singapore, this is the data. Oh, we did this in India, this is the data. So they will be like, okay, come and copy and paste in Ghana. And it doesn't work. Copy and paste has never worked for technology. So I believe that by January, when we are done with this initiative of giving students of the Shark Quiz this access, we'll have enough learning behavior data that we can use to generate reports. We can share that with GIZ, we can share with UNESCO, share with PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte and Touche, KPMG, so that they do their audits of the outcome of our data or our findings, maybe plus or minus 5, margin of error. And then we have a starting point. We can then share that data with the Ghana Education Service. The district directors of education can look at that data. And then we see how we can scale it from maybe 2 districts. Maybe the schools we have now may cover 4 districts. How do we scale it across all the districts, scale it to the national level, so that as a headmaster, when I'm sitting and I pull up a dashboard, I can tell by random, any student I pick, I can tell their strength and weakness in any topic I pick randomly across any subject. I should be able to tell that as a headmaster. The same way a district director of education should be able to pull up a dashboard and tell that for all the schools in their districts, all the way to the national level. I'm sure when we can demonstrate this, then government might be more willing to commit maybe $1 billion, $2 billion to expand infrastructure, and more importantly, invest in the devices, the last mile, devices and digital content production. I believe this will give us a starting point that will be more measurable and more inviting for even foreign direct investment. So from where I sit with my 12 to 13 years of experience, this is what I think will work. We can give it a try. I know GIZ is interested. Maybe you guys can come help us see what we can come out with. Thank you.
Right. So thank you so much. Just to chip something in, because I think it's a very good point you're making. And I think there's something to be said about long-term planning, right? That for you to make any lasting impact, you need to plan way ahead of your time. And this is what has been lacking in the country, because if you ask Ghana, what is the 5 to 10 year, big vision of the education sector in Ghana? We don't have that, right? And so we can wake up today and donate laptops here and there, but it's not feeding into any big goal, right? If you go to Rwanda, they have a goal of making the country the next talent hub of Africa and the world. And so everything that they do, from education, from their activities, it's geared towards that big goal of making the country a talent hub. But it's something we don't have, and I think we need to concentrate on that, like building big goals and long-term goals that would drive the way we do things in our educational sector.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel, for that reaction. Do you have anything to add to this, Mohammed?
So if you look at what is happening, or the commitment from the point of government on the continent, for me, I say it's in a positive direction. It's just that the approach of most governments is where our challenge is, and there's the need for us to wake up at it. Cecil made mention of the fact that laptops were given out, no content for the use of the laptops. What happened to those laptops? They became white elephants. The time the content was ready, or some content was ready, those laptops could not run some of those contents.
That's true.
We build ICT centers across the country. Those ICT centers, as at the time they are constructing them, are state of the art, but they are underutilized. The time they are fully used, or they are fully prepared, or the people are fully prepared to use them, you get to the field and then you realize that this, like 3 or 4 years down the line, when newer computers and advanced level software requirements have come up, and that so-called advanced ICT center 3 years ago is no longer an advanced ICT center. It becomes redundant and cannot be utilized to full scale. So it's more like, can we have responsive policies that speak to the immediate needs, like Momoni said, right? We are speaking about a community level intervention that speaks to the needs of the people. Can we stop that? I call African policies as marketing policies, right? We bring about policies that are meant to sell government, but are not meant to create any impact.
Wow.
Yeah, they are meant to sell the government, but are not meant to create any impact. Recently in Ghana, we have our government coming out with the community ICT center and internet service provision that they were looking at scaling at the various regions, and especially to give access to rural communities. The government right now commissioning most of these things. How many media houses have been able to follow up to check on these things? Believe you me, the number of people who are using, after that point, policy CSOs were all happy and everyone was making noise about it. To date, has anyone gone back to go and make a follow-up to find out what is actually happening? Are the people able to use it? The reality is, some of these places you have gone to put these things in, the people themselves don't even know about it, how to use it, and whether it is even relevant and necessary for them. Can you focus on putting those foundations and setting those foundations right?
Yeah. Wow. Um, Doctor, I think you want to continue. Okay? I'm becoming a little bit sober.
I mean, I had a question in mind about this, and I don't know, it's partially been answered, but I think I'll just ask. So, during the pandemic, we had a lot of innovations coming up. I mean, aside the regular Google Meet and the Zoom and all those platforms that students are using to study, we could also see African innovators and entrepreneurs coming up with their own stuff. So we have Ubongo Kids from Kenya. They had this animated kids shows that teaches maths and science to kids at home. Kenya has Eneza, yeah, and then Ghana we have eCampus OC from Cecil, who is right here with us on the call. And South Africa also developed this STEM digital school digital school ecosystem of investors, yes. So we saw a lot of these things coming up, and it's like they are being really supported. I mean, in Ghana and then outside the country as well, the support is massive. So I just want to know if the policies that we are talking about right now, what exactly is supposed to go into these policies, especially support these entrepreneurs coming up with these wonderful edtech platforms and ideas all over the place. So, what factors do we need to consider? I mean, what do we need to input? What exactly do we need to include in these policies before we roll them out so it doesn't become just marketing policy like Mohammed mentioned? So, yes, I think I'd ask. Who I would ask? Okay,
Well,
Anyone would
I'll
like to
just put
take
it
that?
out there. I'll
Just
put
pick
it
it up.
out there for all three of you
All
to
right.
answer
So
because I
let
think
me
it's a very
let
huge
me
question. Yeah.
yeah,
So
let me
Mohammed will
take
go
it.
first and then Cecil.
Okay.
Mumuni.
okay, fine. I think Cecil will be one of the best person. He will be very responsive because he's
Yes.
sitting on the other side
Yeah.
and specifically working around this. But from my interaction with various startups and edtech engagers within the industry, and also with educational or human capital related organizations and persons through our ecosystem work that we do in this country, what has come out to be common is our bureaucracies don't help us in policy formulation,
Okay.
right? So Cecil made mention of the fact that he's been invited by policy organizations. These organizations ask him to work magic overnight. That is the moment where they have been able to probably get some go ahead to do one or two things and they want to work magic. And at the very onset, they didn't bring Cecil and his likes in.
It becomes difficult.
So you ask yourself, I want to take it out of ethic, right? We have a mobile healthcare service provision, telemedicine.
Yeah.
The pandemic came. A lot of startups had already started innovating around this and how to provide health services digitally without necessarily having to have people to go to hospitals. And that was the time Ghana as a country had not even thought of something like that, talk less of already rolling out a policy that's very responsive. So from the planning perspective, it has to be one proactive, not reactive, because that's one of the things about our policy work.
Yeah.
Our policy works are always reactive. And by reactive, we are responding to a need that probably has popped up in this year 2020, let's say 2021, and the policy would be ready probably by 2025.
And then by then, a lot of things have changed.
That's it. Because Cecil will not be sitting and waiting on the government to come out with a policy that will regulate him. He's thinking about the next thing that he can do to improve on what he has produced and how it is responding to market needs. So we have to move away from that reactive form of planning as a country and policy formulation. But how is that going to be possible? It means we need to introduce our policy makers to some of these technologies. We need to introduce our policy makers to responsive policy making that is based on evidence and results from other places. We take people out to go and learn, but then they come back and they are redundant because someone puts them somewhere. So for me, the three key factors that we should consider from what I just put up here is one, planning and policy making processes should be proactive rather than being reactive. Two, we should ensure that the learnings that we put into some of these projects that we spend money into to go and train experts should be enshrined. Organizations that are sending people out should put in place certain measures in the organization that makes it so difficult for anyone to be able to take those experts away and make it difficult for them to implement the kind of work they're supposed to do. I'm speaking from the policy perspective.
Yeah.
And the third part is we should stop taking policy direction from development partners. No, that is what is affecting our policy actions because we are always chasing where the money lies and who is bringing the money for us to do things.
I can see Emmanuel laughing.
Yeah,
I'm sure he has a reaction to that. Even that is a GID, right? Okay, let's allow you wrap up. Then we go back to
yeah.
Emmanuel.
So for me, these are the top three things I think from policy perspective that we need to add when whenever we are working around things like this. Cecil from his side would have something. Emmanuel too from his side would probably also have something. So let's
Okay,
hear from
right before we go to Sisi, right? Just because of the last statement you made mention of, you're just gonna dive into Emmanuel. Emmanuel, let's hear your reaction to this.
I don't have a reaction to that. He's hit the nail right on the head, and I think it's right that government or countries should think about what is best for them, and rather bring in the resources of development partners, and not the other way around, where development partners are leading in policy discussions. So this is very much what I also think, and the GIZ is very big on following and supporting the vision and mission of a country, and trying to see how we can get them to wherever they get to. It's more about support rather than leading the way. So very good point, Mohammed, on that. I think from my perspective, building infrastructure would be central to empowering people that are innovating around education, and infrastructure builds new markets, right? I don't know how many users Cecil has at this point, but if everyone is included in this digital space, and everyone has access to digital space, I'm sure Cecil would have not less than 100% increase in his users. So we need to build bigger markets and include more people in that space. And I think we also need to incentivize the use of digital solutions. So I come back to Cecil, because Cecil is here. I'm doing free promotion for him. If you see Cecil, incentivizing Cecil's platform, for instance, that maybe people living in certain regions use it for, they don't have to be charged on the internet if they land on his page or they land on his application, because internet cost is still higher than some people's incomes level. So how can you incentivize them? They might want to consume his content, but they don't have the financial or economic accessibility to do that. So we need to support on that. And then, Cecil needs funding. They need funding to build different things in their business. They need funding to market. If you take the Israel example, for instance, before they even build up this startup nation that they are known for, they usually fund innovations that are coming out of a certain sector. So maybe this year we want to advance energy. So there's a certain big fund that is available for anyone who innovates around energy, the energy sector, right? So it pushes the weight behind that. And this time we feel that EdTech or educational technology is very important to us. Why don't we leave a big fund that is available, that if you innovate in this area, you get 100,000 to maybe push your business forward. So those funds need to drive innovation. You need to make those attractive to make people innovate in those areas. So those are the things that I'll talk about as things that the government can do to drive innovation in the EdTech space.
All right, very well. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Cecil, I know you've been itching to say something about this. Emmanuel selling you out there, and at the end of it all, they talked about funding, where the money is. What do you have to say to this?
I'm glad Emmanuel knows me very well. He knows what we've been doing with eCampus. He knows our struggles, and I also agree with Mohammed on how we do the copy and paste even at the policy levels. I'm hoping that things will work out. For me, I would like to speak more from being on the ground and running an actual EdTech for almost a decade now. I think what we would need as EdTech startups or SMEs is access to market. We have a cultural, I won't say it's a cultural problem, but we are now having the way we are talking about digital transformation. I think we are now experiencing a cultural transformation from buying things outright and owning them to subscription. That's a very important thing. And those of you who run subscription business will understand this, or you can sympathize with what I'm saying, or you can relate. Your typical market here in Ghana they are willing to buy a paperback book for 80 cedis and keep it. Yeah, I bought the book for my son, social studies textbook, 50 cedis, I bought it. But when you tell them to pay maybe 10 cedis or even 5 cedis a 10 to have access to the same book digitally on eCampus, where there is some form of artificial intelligence analysis of your child's behavior, and it tells you their strength and weakness per topic, tells you which questions they're able to answer, the difficulty levels of questions they can answer. They don't seem to see value in that. They feel like you are ripping them off. Why should I pay 5 CD every 10, 10 CD every 10? What if my child doesn't use it? And I go like, okay, so the book you've bought for 50 CDs, the book cannot tell you what topics your child is good in. The book cannot tell you the difficulty level of what questions the child is able to answer. It's just a book. It's static. It's not organic. It's not living. And when there is an update, you need to go and buy the second edition. And I doubt your child have consumed the entire book. So how do you measure performance? How do you measure learning outcomes? But when you subscribe, you get all this. They still don't come to terms with the subscription. And sometimes I'm a victim because when my DSTV runs out, I go like, how many matches did I watch that I'm going to play again? And I see people, chasing Netflix hack codes on Telegram. I'm like, Netflix, just 30 cities. Just subscribe. Come on. So we need a cultural transformation in addition to the digital transformation. Because if you're saying we should go digital with education, go digital with our entertainment, go digital with our film industry, go digital with our commerce, and we are not having a cultural transformation to appreciate subscriptions, then we're going to create a lot of failed companies. Because if the subscriptions don't come in, we cannot continue innovating. We've been burning equity since we started this journey. And at a point, your investors will need to what? They need to exit. And if revenues are not coming in, which needs to come in through subscriptions, it becomes frustrating, difficult to motivate the team to keep going, and it becomes unattractive. It kills the passion. So what I'm asking for in these policies is make sure that the policies deliberately create access to market. This is not difficult, okay? So I give you a typical example, all right? I don't think it is too difficult for the government to subscribe 1 million of junior high school students to eCampus or any other platform for 1 CD a term. It won't cost Ghana anything. That's just 1 million Ghana cedis, all right?
Out of the free SAG's budget, right?
No, I don't even care where the budgets come from. They can get it from Cocoa, they can get it from anywhere. Even an individual within governments can afford 1 million Ghana cedis. Let's not pretend. Come on, man, the vehicles they push around, some are more than 1 million Ghana cedis. Let's not pretend. If you really care about your constituents, every minister say, I care about my constituents, I'm bringing 100,000 Ghana cedis. There are 200 something ministers. Let's not over-exaggerate these things. So 1 CD, a term is what, almost 4 months. We are currently charging 99 pesos a month, but we are willing to work with government to go as low as 1 CD per student per term. Government didn't like the idea. They think it's expensive. And I'm like, wow. Okay, let's put that aside. If you invest
99 pesos.
99 pesos is expensive. And we said, okay, you pay 1 CD a term per student. That one today say is expensive because they are thinking the number of students and this small boy, we give him this money, so Charlie, he might not bring the money to invest in our party. So, let's put that aside. So the most important thing here is if you invest 1 million Ghana cedis and we put 1 million students across different demographics, those in underserved areas, those in the urban areas, those in the middle belt, those from affluent homes, those from average homes, and then we allow them to consume the same content at an equitable level. After a term, we will see that who really needs help here. It will surprise you that that child from the deprived slum who benefited from this program is actually doing way better in science than the privileged child who has everything at their disposal. So now you begin to say, okay, who should I really help? Who really needs help? Then when we can project this data with the support of government, I can promise you, I speak to a lot of alumni. If we project this data, a lot of our alumni, even some year groups, just year groups, if every year group says, look, based on this data, we want to adopt mathematics for our school. Then the next year group say we want to adopt chemistry, physics. You'll be amazed that for schools that are as old as 100 years, they may even run out of subjects and there'll be more year groups looking for subjects to adopt. At one Ghana cedi per student. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but nobody will give their one Ghana cedi if there's no data to explain the impact of what this can be and where the real help is needed. On average, people have at least 3 to 2 phones, which I don't know how to use that though, but I tried, it never worked. I always misplace the second one. So I'm just going to only one phone. But on average, people have 2 to 3 phones and they have it lying there. Some of them are damaged. If we intentionally, through a program like what I'm saying, every minister or every DC decides that, look, in my district, all right, 1 cedi per student. Those students who don't have access to laptops, tablets, and smart devices, okay, district constituency members or even people in the diaspora who want to help, donate your used smartphone. We'll take the used smartphone to the NVTI, all right, and then the technical schools, and then get the guys at Circle and Kaneshi to come and trade on how to refurbish these phones. And then we'll go and give the phone to that child in the classroom that I've spent the 1 cedi on. Then you see, you begin to close the loop and build sustainability. These are things we can do as people who love their country and care about their people. It doesn't require $1 billion investment. It requires commitment and showing people why they need to get involved. If you don't show me why I need to get involved, there's a lot of stereotype in the system. If you don't show me why I need to get involved, the first thing that comes to mind, these people, they want our money to go and buy cars for their whatever. You know what I mean? Oh, these people, they want to rob the system. They are corrupt. Maybe they're not. They genuinely want to help. But because there is no data to show that, look, this is where we need the help and this is where we need to donate our support to, nobody wants to help. We have a platform that if you allow people to use it for 6 months, you will get enough data to communicate this to your population, to get them willingly involved to help you be the best government on the continent. How difficult can this be? So that's my submission.
All right, Cecil. Okay, Cecil, thank you so much for that contribution. At some point, we felt like it was being a comedian, but we just let that pass. By the way, we are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we have a couple of audience reactions. Let's take a couple of them and let's know what our audience is saying, and then we'll come back for final words, and we can wrap the show off. Just so you know, this is a takeoff from a previous episode where we spoke about data science and artificial intelligence. And on this call, we've seen Emmanuel, Mohammed, and Sisi will talk about data, the need for data, right? I think you might have to go back, watch the other episode, and hear what guests we had. The man I call Einstein, right? We had a lot of digest around data and how the data science and artificial intelligence can help improve the educational systems in Africa, right? Let's take a couple of audience reaction, and then we will be wrapping up. Kwame Selassie says it is also impressive that public servants and civil servants need to educate themselves. Officers in position of power should know or should be knowledgeable. Well, I think we will agree to that. Don't you think so?
I absolutely agree to that. And,
for someone who sees that policy,
I tell you why. Good thing I would use this opportunity to acknowledge this organization called Emerging Public Leaders.
Yeah.
Who is bringing in a stream of young graduates who are really, really doing a lot of work around this. Like you see them as civil servants placed in various ministries. And most of these young guys are doing great on LinkedIn. You can see the learnings they are doing and they are applying this into the work of public service. I really, really hope we are able to have more of their particular kind or their group of people happen to future in a lot of civil service work ahead of time. We would have a lot of change happen in the next 2 to 3 years if we have more of their kind. And if other civil servants actually adapt that, we have a lot to achieve as a country. Yeah.
I think you need to let go of the philosophy of the past and start thinking about the future, and not just the celebrity kind of thinking where Mohammed spoke about, where we only do things just to create a marketing strategy. Right? Start thinking about 50 years plan and all of those. We have a question from Alberta customer. Right, I would like to ask what the common person can also do to help push a digitalized education in Ghana and Africa.
Wow. Wow.
This is a terrific question. Mumuni, Emmanuel, or Sisi, which of you would like to go into this?
I think
No. Emmanuel has been laughing all along. Let me hear from Emmanuel. Emmanuel, let's hear your comment.
Yeah, the comments are really interesting, and I like the points that are being made. But I think as a common person, as the person has put it, as Alberta has put it, I think we should go beyond just being consumers of digital tools or platforms. So if you look at the statistics, just the African continent is largely youth based, and so you have that kind of easiness to adopt digital tools, and we are wild consumers of digital tools all over the world. And this recent ban on Twitter in Nigeria has even showed how young Nigerians were crazy about their Twitter and how that has been taken away from them. And I think for us as young people, or for young people in Africa to really contribute to the development, we need to think about what we can do with the digital tools and innovation that are at our disposal. Now you can fit a whole production in your hand with an iPhone. You have the world's information in your hand, like all the information you would ever need to do whatever. It's in your hand. You can access it. So this is an opportunity to create like never before. This is an opportunity for you to do something out of the ordinary, and you need to take it upon yourself, not only to be consumers, but to think about ways that you can contribute. And it could just be anything. It could be a podcast that you have started to talk about the amazing things that people are doing in the ecosystem. It could be a video production like you have today. It could be, making calls to smallholder farmers and understanding what their challenges are, and writing an article for that to make people know about it. So let's think about creative ways to put something out there. I always say that if you look 6 months back, what have you put out there in the world that you can say that, hey, in the last 6 months, I put something out there when I'm not here, people can refer to it and say, hey, I created this thing in the last 6 months. And if you're not doing that, you're missing out on something that people living in the past never had. People never had this opportunity that we had. So let's be creators. Let's think about creating things. You don't have to create as much as Cecil has done, because what Cecil has done, it's like the whole system. It's a big business. It's something that has been.
You have to
If you
do
think about it that way,
something.
you will never be able to. You never start. But just think about the smallest things that you can do. Smallest things. You can use your phone to record a podcast, and you are good to go.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Let's, Dorcas, can you read us what this person is saying?
Yeah, there are lots of comments here. So, Ambassador Dr. Forson says a typical Ghanaian needs to be sensitized about such things. Is the mentality, and I believe with much education and the benefits of digital education, to be easier to adopt.
Okay, that was one from Dicta Forcing. There are a couple of comments coming through. We have less than 4 minutes to wrap on the call. Let's just take a few more. Egba Emmanuel says, Cecile is speaking with facts. That's the beauty of talking to the guy on the field. Practical speech. Cecile Chale, Jiwo why, free of charge. Let's hear watching from Nigeria. Here is another world entirely. Politics can break you totally. Oh, wow. Emmanuel, thanks for joining us all the way from Nigeria. Let's not even go into the talk about Nigeria, because then we're going to feature about the issue with Twitter and how policies are not really being regulated. anybody can develop A, B, C, D. Wow, interesting. At Cecile, Labdo, an organization that mobilizes tech devices across the globe and send them to institutions needing them. Devices are loaded with educational devices. I think that's not totally complete. Let's see what they had to say to complete it. Anybody can code. If you could kindly send in your comments as a full, so we really understand and we can share. I don't know, Cecile, do you understand that?
I know him. I'll give him a call after this call. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's
He's
the
a
connection
content
we've tried to
provider.
bring to you here at Digital Times Africa. Connecting
He's
the
a
world
content provider on the
digitally.
campus. So.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good. Let's take a few more comments and then we'll wrap up the show. They fund literally most government programs, and Ghanaian institutions are not proactive in managing their resources, hence falling on foreign aid. I think this was a comment when you were speaking about the policies, just
Yeah.
creating the celebrity kind of show, and not going back to actually review and see what we have been able to come through with all of those. That's all time will allow us on the comment section. Thank you guys for joining us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'll do well to make this content available to people. You can watch, send us comments, you can reach out to us via social media platform. This is the second episode of the digital education, right? It's looking very much interesting, and should we take it a step further, Douglas?
Yeah, I think we should have a third one.
We should have the third one.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I think there's more to speak on it.
There's so much to speak about.
There's so much to speak about.
Okay, then just maybe, we are not certain, yeah? Just maybe we're going to bring you a third episode on digital education, and then we can explore, really know how we can build forward. I think the report I was talking about, we saw that some of the challenges that people had were dealing with funding. We hardly see incubators for EdTech institutions. You probably agree with that. I've not seen so many myself, right? We have incubators incubating fintech institutions. They fund fintech. Oh my God, we're having like unicorns coming out of fintech. When are we going to get unicorns coming out of EdTech? I think that should be a competition for the next one,
Very
right?
soon.
Unicorns coming out of EdTech. That'll be interesting. So we want to see change happen within the narrative or the landscape of digital education, especially with the times you are at, right? So let's take final comments from our guests and then we'll wrap up the show. Emmanuel, your final comments. How do you think we can sustain this developmental process that we've churned or checked so far, riding off the pandemic and what it has influenced?
I think we just need to know where we are going. Where do we want to get to? What do we want to achieve? And this would determine exactly what we need to do in the next steps. And I think if you don't know where you're going, any road leads you to nowhere. So it will be really important for us to have that long vision, that long goal to help us in the process. And just to also commend you for the work that you do. And I think this is a good platform that you should definitely get to the 300th episode, not just three episodes. So keep pushing. A lot of topics, believe it or not, there are lots of topics that we haven't even started to discuss. And I think this is the best platform to do that. And I would want to see this continue. So thanks so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Cecile, your last words.
Okay, so what I would like to say is I want parents to start getting more involved in, using EdTech tools. Sometimes a parent, if you understand what the value of the tool is to you, even the parent, then you can guide your child or the student or the learner to also see the value in it. So if I say parents, it cuts across teachers as well. Most of the time, the focus has been on the student. The students are mostly a bit younger. They have so many things that, taking their attention. If they turn on their phone, there are so many apps that are calling for your attention on your phone. Why should they go to the EdTech one? But if as a parent, who you are the one buying the data, you are the one, sponsoring their education. So you can get involved and say, look, every week I want you to get at least 200 points on eCampus, for example. And if you get to the 1,000 points mark, I'll probably get you a new maybe PlayStation 4. Like, get involved with the process so that you know what your child is doing, what value your child is getting, and how can you as a parent also use that value to improve on the investments you are making into your child's well-being. So let's not just put all the burden on the student. You are not learning. You put on digital tools. You're always on Facebook. As a parent and as a teacher, how many EdTech tools are you familiar with to even recommend to the child? And you're always on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, mommy, where should I go? Your mommy's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? And the teacher is like, hey, people on social media. Okay, teacher, which app should I download? I don't know. You know, so then you're not helping. So I encourage teachers and parents and big brothers and big sisters, explore tools. Now, if you don't want to go to the stress, just go to ecampus.com.gh and explore it. If it makes sense to you, get your child subscribed and then start getting some value. So that's my last words. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cecile. Mohammed, you're joining us in the studio. What do you have to say?
So what I would say is that as a continent and as young people, we should explore this question, right? How can we navigate the policy challenges we are having that is hindering digital education?
Okay.
Our laws have loopholes. Our system is claiming it's not ready to work to respond to our needs.
Yeah.
Then it's time for us to look at that same system and find ways we can be able to also come up with solutions that would help us without necessarily depending on that system. Yeah.
Wow. See, it's for some reason this guy has deep word, like he has words. He's spoken about a lot of things, and I think we need to discuss on the next episode how we can institutionalize PDAs. Sisi, what do you think? Good to see your daughter on the call. Was that your son?
Yes, my little boy.
Little
he
boy.
Wants to be everywhere.
Good to
I don't know,
meet
maybe
you.
he wants to take over. He wants to be CEO earlier than I expect. So I'll probably resign.
He's an EdTech pioneer for the making. Right. I think the next one we should look into how we can institutionalize PDAs using the use of mobile phones in institutions in Africa. What do you think?
Absolutely. We're actually having a conversation around that just yesterday, how we can change or try to change the narration around schools actually not seeing that to be a challenge, but rather getting to schools to understand how important we have gotten to an age where there's no need for schools to rather have a problem with the mobile devices, but rather for the schools to start thinking of how they can come out with measures that can make students to maximize the use of these devices. Because it's like we are always focusing on the negatives all the time. Can we move away from always saying the phone will let the student do this, the phone will let the student do this too? Okay, if you do A, B, C, and D, this is what the benefits will be, and tailor students' mindsets towards that.
Well, thank you so much. Talking about that, the phone will make the student. You've not tried, but we already decreeing a failure, right? So we will look at that. I think, Lucas, you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. So at the next edition, we'll probably talk about that. Let's wrap up the show for now. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a few more comments in the chat box. I'm tempted to take a few. So I'll better say thank you, Cecile, Mohammed, and Emmanuel. Nice to meet you, Junior Cecile. Oh my God, Junior Cecile is already making rounds on the internet. Yeah, we want the third episode. Yes, better we're bringing you guys the third episode. I think anybody can code develop the devices and monitor, so the need for cheating. Oh, okay, there's no need for cheating. Interesting. Thank you for the clarification. Anybody can develop. I wonder where that name came from. Maybe everyone can develop. Let's draw the curtains at this juncture on the call. Thank you so much, everyone that joined us live by ways of social media, Facebook, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And thanks so much to our guests who has made this entire edition or episode very insightful. Really appreciate you. For more insights, you can hop onto our YouTube page, follow us across social media, bringing you more of this insightful conversations. And you can check out our website at www.digitaltimesafrica, where we bring you relevant updates around the tech entrepreneurship innovation ecosystem in Africa. You don't want to miss a beat, right? We bring all these curated information to your doorstep. Please visit that website now and check out what we do, right? The next edition of Digital Factory will come off on the 8th of July. On the 8th of July, we want to see you stay in touch on the 8th of July. So on the 8th of July, we'll probably talk to you about how we can institutionalize PDAs. That will be an interesting one for us. From all of us here in the studio, it's goodbye from us. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, Mohammed. We're saying good night. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.